Morning, everyone. This is the February 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Lower Downtown Design Review Commission. So I'll call the meeting to order. Before we begin our discussion, I want to review the options for public comment. If you are joining by computer, tablet, or smartphone, you should select the hand raise option. If you are calling in by phone, you need to email landmark@denvergov.org with your name, phone number you're using to call in, and the project you would like to discuss. And/or you can dial *9 to raise your hand. In addition, we have some tips for audio participation that if you're having any trouble with sound quality, we encourage you to download Zoom on your desktop or your laptop or your mobile device. Within Zoom, there are some settings that can help you enhance the audio. Probably the best one is to add the background noise suppression to cut down on the background noise that we have here in the room and our papers. You can also test your speaker and microphone and make sure that you adjust them to the maximum volume output. For presenters and public commenters, when it's your turn to speak, we'll ask you to, or we will unmute you. Make sure that you are unmuted on your end. Click on your microphone icon at the bottom of the screen. If you're still having trouble, you can expand your menu next to the microphone to reveal some additional options that can allow you to test your microphone. If you're still having trouble, you can always call in, be signed in on your laptop, but call in on your phone, and you can go from there. Oh, wait, you have the meeting record. Yeah, live. Well, and actually, we're going to introduce us. Right. So, actually, I'll stop sharing so that people see you and you can introduce yourself. There we go. Okay. So yes, I will ask each commissioner to provide their name and the position that they serve on the commission. We're going to go around the table and start with Heather. Okay. Heather Vasquez Johnson, practicing architect.
Andy Duckett, NT Preservation Architect.
Mike Coughlin, developer. Fred Blake, property owner.
John McIntyre, at large.
Introduce yourself. Introduction. Introduction.
My hearing is Jim Graver, president.
Perfect. And I'm Jane Chrysler, preservation architect. All right. Sure. So, first item on the agenda, we have 2 meeting records to approve. Does anyone have any questions or clarification on the meeting record for November 3rd, 2022 or January 5th, 2023? If not, would someone like to make a motion?
Just a quick question. I think there's different attendance on some of them. I was at one and not.
So apparently, we've been doing this slightly wrong all the time. There is not a requirement that they be approved. It is that there's no objection.
No,
all right, I'm sorry.
There have to be a motion to approve minutes. As long as there's no corrections, the minutes can be approved as distributed. So unless anyone has corrections to the minutes, they can stand approved.
So no voting.
You don't need a vote unless there's corrections to be made.
Then I will ask if there are any corrections that need to be made or that anyone would like to make to either set of meetings. Okay, the meeting minutes are approved. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah. So next on the agenda is our consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda, and that is 2023 COA 019 1860 Blake Street. Does anyone have any questions or comments regarding this item or would like to pull it from the consent agenda? right, would anyone like to make?
Do I do it?
Yes.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second Mike and Heather for the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That agenda is approved, so thank you to the folks online who came in support of that item. You are approved, and thank you very much. And we are closed that.
All right. Thank you for the motion. This is your
That was my
last day.
official duty. It's my last meeting.
Oh.
No.
We came together.
I'm being kicked off early.
No, you're,
It's a story I don't want to really talk about. Gotcha.
wait, what?
I'm kidding,
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I was like, wait, what? Huh?
He's unavailable to be here for the next two meetings.
Oh,
So,
right, that's right.
so therefore, he had to make all the motions today.
All the motions.
It's exhausting.
I wish I had a better speech prepared. Because it's just been such a joy to serve with you, Mike. So
Absolutely.
thanks. Sorry to see you go.
I'll be back. We have an empty parking lot on the corner of 16th. What's he? Come back someday to talk about that.
Awesome. I'll be happy to have you back.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm gonna, since you all gathered for a consent agenda item, we threw in the year in review so that you aren't bored with this meeting. I usually like to do a, can you hear? But, okay, a little bit more, okay. I usually like to do a year in review to explain to you all, but also to the public, all of the fun things that Landmark did last year. So last year we added, we ended the year with 58 historic districts. That's no change from the previous year, but that's kind of normal, like ebb and flow for districts. But we did add 4 new individual landmarks. So the Hartford Courthouse, the Robinson House, Cadillac Loft, and Livestock Exchange Building. So that brings us, to 357 individual landmarks. We worked on a bunch of planning and regulatory projects. So we completed last year the Nuestras Historias, and I apologize for everyone who speaks Spanish. I do not. So that is my mangled version of the title of it. So I'm trying. It's a Mexican-American, Latino, and Chicano historic context. And it was a really great, successful project led by Jenny Buddenborg and also Evan Schuckler and a few other people on the team. Both of them are no longer with us, but that's okay. They did an excellent job, so I want to put that out there publicly. We also worked on the design guideline update for the Denver landmark structures and districts. That would be the general design guidelines, not the lower downtown design guidelines, where we completed phase 1 of that project. And then the West Area Plan we've been involved with for several years, and we are no longer involved with it this year because we wrapped up the landmark stuff now. It's all about adoption and things like that. And we don't need to be actively involved with it. In terms of things in progress, so Discover Denver is always ongoing. Phase 4 is wrapping up. Phase 5 is launching. I think it's this coming month. It depends on the weather. The snow has thrown everything off a little. We're working on the Near Northwest Plan, the Near Southeast Plan. Those are areas that the Neighborhood Planning Initiative are working on. And then we've also behind the scenes been doing a project on studying our own designations for individual landmarks and seeing whether they're inclusive of the full story of the property. So for example, we know that West High School is not, the designation is not inclusive of the full story of West High School. The designation is all about the architecture. And there's a lot of interesting history that happened, and it was a really important building, and it really, the West Side blowouts and Chicano movement were so central to that building, and that's not covered at all. Part of that is because that was only about 10 or 15 years old, so it wasn't really history by the time the designation happened. So we're going to take a look at the other stories that are missing from our designation, and we've been doing that. So that's an exciting project.
Next question.
Yeah.
So if you change the language of the designation to something you do administratively, does that have to go to council?
We don't know yet. There's not really a great mechanism for it, so we're studying it. But we hope to even if it's just telling the full story so that it's recognized and not necessarily going to council, it's still important to us to tell that story. In terms of design review, so we have two halves of the group. One is the planning and regulatory work, one is the design review work. We do a lot of cross work together, cross team collaboration on all of these. Design reviews, so we had 220 quick reviews, not that many. Those are really simple projects, and we will have a lot more this year in 2023 because we're changing how we do those. We're adding more things to quick, which is great. We had almost 1,200 administrative reviews. Commission, so that's LPC and LDDRC, reviewed just under 290 projects. And we had almost 1,700 applications this year for design review. So it's a little bit less than last year. You can see here the quicks and the commission level reviews were comparable, but the administrative review, which is in green, was a little bit less than it has been in the past. You'll notice that our number of quick reviews has gone down. So here's a breakdown of what over 5 years, what the changes have been. The big one is re-roofing. In, 2018, we had a hailstorm. We had a hailstorm in some of our historic districts, so we had a lot of re-roofing that happened. And that has not happened, knock on wood, in our historic districts recently. But every year, you never know. So we also broke down the types of design review projects, and this is really hard to see. And you can see that the two big ones are the log and zone reviews. Those are building and zoning permits, and then revisions, which are things that are after we've already issued our approval. So they come back to us either during permitting or after permitting or during construction or during inspection, that kind of thing. Those revisions happen regularly. So those are the two biggest types of projects. But they're pretty stable, which is good right now. So I'm going to take those out so that you can see this a little bit better. It's still hard to read. So yay, I'm going to underline the ones that are actually the more important ones to look at. So the big things that we're seeing an uptick in are additions, alterations, concept and site development plan reviews, infill construction, so new buildings going in our historic districts, site work. We're getting a lot more solar, which is great. We're getting a lot more tax credits, and we're getting more zone lot amendments. So those are all pretty substantial projects. The additions and buildings and concepts and things like that tend to be more the large scale projects. So the complexity of our work is going up, which is why we're feeling, even though our numbers went down a little in 2022, we're still feel underwater because it's a lot of work for us. The Landmark Preservation Commission, as Mike was saying, it seems like a much more busy commission, and that's true. They had 27 meetings. They reviewed 235 projects. So the big changes is that Larry Sykes joined us. He's an architect, and Brad Gassman, who's also an architect, stepped down. He finished his first term and decided that it was enough of a commitment for him, and he had a lot of other things going on, and we appreciated all of his input and work there. So, but I'll focus on Lower Downtown Design Review Commission. You guys reviewed 24 projects. A little quiet this year. We had 10 meetings. Steve Weil stepped down, and we are still working on filling his spot. We are going to be filling Mike's spot and Jane's spot as well. So if you all have know any real estate developers, business owners and operators in the district, and preservation architects, please let's talk to them and let me know. And then we put a call out for interest as well and shared it with the groups, the registered neighborhood organizations, the city council member, AIA Colorado, Historic Denver. What do you think about that? I think Historic Denver, History Colorado, and National Trust, those are the ones that can nominate to you all. And so, so we're just trying to gather names to help them. Yes.
I just to point out, it would be helpful to swap me to developer and Philip property owner.
True. We'll see what we get. We already had someone who was a developer or who may be interested. So, so I broke down the things that in pink are the ones that we were recommending, and the things in purple are the ones that you voted on, how you voted. you ended up approving more than we recommended, which is funny. We recommended conditions, I think, at denial one time more than you guys did. And so it's all good. We were pretty close on par to what this is not to say that you all are following our lead. It is that we are gauging what you all are going to say correctly. That's what we're trying to look at here, because we want to guide our customers to fastest success. All right, so certificate of demolition eligibility reviews. We reviewed demolition citywide. Occasionally, we get some in historic districts, so we got 12 last year. Most of those are non-contributing buildings or garages. So not a big deal. They just have to be reviewed. We did get 114 DDEs and 554 demolitions that are outside of historic districts. So making that 680. It's a little bit less than we have in previous years. Last year we had a boatload. We had 745 that we reviewed administratively within 10 business days and approved. This year it was 556 that we did. We posted 10 properties. So that means that we put a posted notice on the property because we found it had potential to be a landmark. It's a lot less than we have in previous years. So we were in the 4% range. We are now down below 2% of the properties that have come in that have potential to be landmarks. So we realized that the ordinance change at the end of 2019 really shows it is much harder to be a landmark than we ever anticipated the ordinance, the designation criteria change would entail. So unfortunately, it's become harder to be a landmark. Tax credits, this is a really fun one. So the Landmark Preservation Commission reviews tax credits for residential non-income producing properties in Denver. And the LPC approved almost $250,000 in tax credits for historic preservation work. So that was almost $1.2 million worth of total costs for rehabilitation of historic properties. So that's bigger than we've had. Here's our graph for 4 years. It's pretty much off the charts. We're pretty stable, but we did some advertising of this program and it has had a lot more success. We love giving away free money when people are doing preservation work on their building. So great. Couple of other things. So we got some grants last year, which is great. We're working, so I mentioned the Mexican American, Latino, and Chicano historic context. That was completed last year, and that we worked on getting funding for our next context, which is the American Indian and Indigenous Peoples Historic Context. We are kicking that off on February 25th at the Denver Indian Center. So that is a Saturday. It's going to be midday. We're going to have food. We're going to have door prizes. It's going to be fun. We're hoping that many members of the American Indian and Indigenous people communities come, but also everyone else. So we'll probably spread the word about that. But we got a bunch of grants for this project. So we got a grant from the National Park Service, from the National Trust, from the Rose Community Foundation, and then we supported this through community planning and development. Our own funds, as well as Denver Mountain Parks, has kicked in some money as well, which is awesome. I mentioned this inclusivity and designation project. We are funding that ourselves and have been working with some preservation consultants and architectural historians to look into those designations. And then Discover Denver is a big component of preservation work in the city, and that is sponsorship or a partnership with Historic Denver and us, and that is largely funded through the State Historical Fund, but Landmark puts in the cash match for that. We did a lot of community presentations. I'm not going to go through all of these because it's a lot to share, but we did a bunch of community presentations, which is great. We try to do more every year, and it's getting easier now that people are back to having in-person meetings. We also speak at a lot of conferences and symposia and universities lectures. So we presented a couple things at the Saving Places Conference last year. The National Alliance of Preservation Commissions Forum happens every other year, and so we have quite a good representation there. Abby is on the board of the NAPC, and so she often speaks at their webinar series, and she spoke at the Michigan Preservation Conference. few of us have spoken at some university lectures, which is fun and exciting. And then a few of us are involved with professional organizations. So as I said, Abby's vice chair of the NAPC, Crystal's a member of the Public Art Committee, and I'm a member of the Rocky Mountain chapter of the Association for Preservation Technology, which is, those two are hard to get on, and mine is not as hard. So I will toot their horns, not mine. I volunteered and they took me, so there we go. And then a couple of administrative projects. So we decided to restructure the Landmark team. We decided to restructure planning services last year. And so we spent a long time last summer, spring, summer, fall, in figuring out what this restructuring looks like and trying to implement it. And part of it is to change it from me being the landmark manager and supervising everyone to me being the landmark manager and having two supervisors, one for design review and one for planning and regulatory, and having folks who would report directly to them. So what we're doing right now, we have a planning and regulatory supervisor, that's Kara Hahn. She was promoted last year. We are hiring currently for a principal, which is going to be an internal promotion for someone. And we are going to hire internally for a principal planner for design review as well. And then we are currently hiring a design review supervisor. That was in our budget last year that was approved to go into effect in 2023. So we are currently hiring for that position. If you know of anyone, feel free to talk up. And at the end of the day, hopefully at the end of the winter, early spring, we will hire a staff planner, and that's going to be our lowest entry-level planning position. But we are going to expand what quick reviews do. So we're going to make solar, if it meets our guidelines, be a quick review, and retaining walls and fences and kind of the simpler projects will be quick reviews, and that person will do a lot of that. So we're also doing a big filing clean out, sending things over to Western History Collection. We're working on application checklists and a designation customer guide and stuff like that. So lots of stuff going on. And we did a lot of hiring last year. Our new folks, we have some promotions. We also have some new folks. So Matt was our landmark and zoning inspector last year, and then this year he's now our associate city planner. So we're now hiring for an inspector. Let's see, Bridget Trujillo, who is in the middle left, is an associate city planner. She came to us from the residential plan review team. Emma Shunsky is our permit review tech. She's doing all of our intake work and kind of our administrative help. And then let's see, Kathy Corbett, whom some of you know, many of you know, was hired as a part-time senior city planner at the end of the year and just started with us in January. So I think that's it. Oh, what's on tap? Now I get to say all the exciting stuff we're doing. So we're going to finish up the org structure and hiring there. We've got this AIP historic context, the American Indian and Indigenous Peoples context, and we're so excited about it. We're going to be kicking it off on February 25th, but we're also going to have a booth at the Denver Powwow at the Coliseum in March. So if you go to that, come say hi to us. We're going to be completing this inclusivity and designation project. We're going to work on phase 2 of the design guidelines. We've got a bunch of interesting designations on deck, and we're hoping to expand outreach and engagement efforts as we always do every year. So pretty sure that's it. Any questions?
What else is moving to quick?
So I have a list, and I can't, yeah, I have a list, but some of it's going to be, so sometimes we do foundation stabilization work, that will be a quick. Solar is definitely going to be a quick if it meets our guidelines, which is great, so it won't have to go through the regular design review process. It'll be with typically 1 to 2 business days. Retaining walls, as long as they meet our guidelines, which most of them will now meet our guidelines, we changed that. Simple mechanical has always been on there, so a lot of it is just like rooftop units, as long as it meets our guidelines, really quick. That I think making that more robust as to what will be included will be there. Some of them were simple things that,
Have there been changes? I'm curious, because I'm kind of ignorant on this one, but have there been any changes to the guidelines for solar?
yes. Yes, so we changed them they were adopted by LCC November 2022. It was the rear 2/3 of the roof. It is now 3 feet back from the front of the building. It's based on roof slope. So if it's a flat roof, you can have solar anywhere. If it's a front gable, it's 3 feet back from the front eave. It's at below the ridge line. If it is we have gambrel, we have side gable, we have all the various different roofing forms so that it can be, there's more solar ability for people to install solar, but it's based on roof form.
Okay, because it used to be, I think street facing,
Yeah.
but now you can do street facing as long as it's set back, as long as it meets the other guidelines.
So if you have a bungalow with a side gable roof, so the front slope, you can't put it on the front slope. It still has to be on the back. But if you have a front gable roof, then you can put it on the side facing slope. If you're on a corner property, it used to be a little harder to do. Now there's really no regulation for corner property. You just have to have it the 3 feet back to the front. If you are facing south, so properties on like 7th Avenue, and trying to think, on Potter Highlands, there's a bunch of avenue facing properties. And if they have a side gable roof, so they have a front roof slope facing the street, and the only solar location would be on the front, then those would go to the Landmark Preservation Commission for review. They would be administrative, but we're trying to make it, we think it's going to be the most flexible in the country because a lot of them are about visibility, and for us, it's just set it back.
Cool.
Yeah. Any other questions? We're not busy at all.
I don't know how you
Sound like
can
it.
that.
And when people say, what's going on with this one project? And I'm like, that's what I did last year. We hired and trained. That's what we did last year. So much we could do. And I know there's a backlog of things we need to tackle. And I appreciate that. And it's very much on our radars. And at some point, we will have a breather. And hopefully this is this year to get some of this stuff done.
I have to say, the TC guys are, I mean, I said this a bit before the meeting, but I'll say it at the meeting. I mean, I just feel as a working developer, Landmarks is the most collaborative department, CPD or, anybody I have to do with. And, you talked a little bit about, with the approvals, about, working with applicants to help them understand what the commissions are going to have to say, et cetera. And I think that's true. I mean, it's frustrating to me to hear about or see projects that struggle to get through LPC or here, because it's like, guys, you work with staff. It's actually not, I mean, everything's a challenge, but it's not that hard. Work with staff and listen to them. And staff works with you to get to what'll get there.
Understand that you have to do a project that meets guidelines. Like,
Yeah.
if you're gonna design a project that does guidelines, it's not gonna
But I will, to some people's defense, there are some legitimate complaints because sometimes we don't get it right. We don't read the room the way we think we're reading it. And so there are times that you all or the Landmark Preservation throws curveballs, Landmark Preservation Commission throws curveballs, and we just had one where we were recommending approval last week, and LPC denied it, and we were like, "Ooh, did not see that coming." And so that there are legitimate complaints out there because there are times that we don't quite read the room the right way. We're close. You can see by the numbers, we're close, but we're not perfect.
It would be strange if it was lockstep.
Yeah.
I think the public would have no confidence in that personally.
True.
So, but I agree with you. I think that this commission does a good job of defending the guidelines, defending the historic district, but getting people's projects across the finish line. And especially these infill projects that we had more of a couple of years ago. You know, there were a lot of infill projects that got across the finish line, which is great. It's great for the district, good for the property owners. It's good.
Awesome. Well, I will stop sharing. Thank you for listening to me. Talk, not new share. Cancel. Stop share.
Thank you.
Any last words for wonderful Mike?
I'll just say thanks, everybody. It's been a ton of fun being on this commission. Thank you for that, for the excellent staff. And Jen, you did such a great job.
Oh, thank
Really
you.
do.
It's
So easy. This is so easy to be on this commission, so Jane, you're great. It's been a lot of fun to be in your class.
I know, I know.
So, I wish you guys the best. Had an easy 2 or 3 years with a lot of canceled meetings, haven't we?
Yeah.
I think going forward, not so much, maybe.
Honestly, we would have canceled this one if you didn't have a consent item. But we would have missed you then. You would have missed your last meeting.
There you go.
We definitely need to celebrate
Yeah.
when you're back in town.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, then I guess, without further ado, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.